Great, thank you, Aldred. Morning and welcome to our Inventor Revit Interoperability webinar. Today we're basically going to look at how to collaborate with Revit users as an Inventor user. So looking at how can an Inventor user consume Revit data and pass information back to Revit. Today your presenters are myself, Carl van Rooyen, and doing the demos we'll have Aldred Boyd doing the live demos for us. I'll be doing all of the talking. So we'll move on to the little note here, just for you to, so you know the session is recorded. It will be placed up onto our YouTube channel after the fact as well. So you can always go back and review the video on YouTube. And you can take advantage of the chat panel if you have any questions. Place them there in the chat. We'll monitor that and ask those questions either as they come through or towards the end when we do our Q&A session. So moving on to our agenda, Aldred's got it up here for us. We're going to start with an intro, kind of behind the idea of why would you want to be working or having this interoperability with Revit. We'll talk about Inventor's AnyCAD feature and how that is used to import the Revit model. We'll cover a bit of the new simplification tool that is in Inventor 2022. We say new, basically modified from previous versions, but with some new features within that. We'll cover a little bit about model states and how that can help with simplification. There's also a new feature in 2022. We'll then move on to how to actually export the simplified model to Revit. And we'll close off with how do we manage those changes, or how do we manage changes between the different models. And we'll finish with the summary and Q&A. So going into our introduction, we are seeing companies who are needing to deal with increased design complexity. And this is leading towards the need for increased cooperation between architects and engineers. The architects doing the factory or the building that the equipment the engineer is going to be designing goes into. And with the AnyCAD import features and the new Revit export features in Inventor 2022, interoperability between Inventor and Revit is getting better than ever. The AnyCAD has basically been in Inventor for quite a few years now, but they've been improving it and bringing Inventor and Revit closer as far as talking to each other. These features are allowing for designers to work with a coordinated design. Now, what is a coordinated design? It's a model where both the building and the machinery exist within the same space. This is allowing designers to adjust for clashes and make better design decisions as they go through the design. This in turn leads to less rework being carried out on site because any clashes and anything that has been seen in the design can be sorted out then instead of waiting to see that on site during installation. This connected workflow to allow for that coordinated design is now smoother and brings the architectural and equipment design worlds closer together. Our webinar today will take you through the process of how to link Revit models into Inventor and then to provide the reference to the building in which the equipment will be placed. So we'll be taking a Revit model, bringing it in. That gives us our floor space that we have to work with. We can then design and place in the equipment relative to that workspace. This equipment that's been placed in will then be exported from Inventor as a Revit file, a native Revit file. So no need to deal with neutral formats going out to a step file or a DWG or EXF file. And then this native Revit file will be linked back into Revit. This creates a complete picture with respect to the layout of the building and respective equipment within that building. So, as I mentioned, the AnyCAD option in Inventor, or the importing in Inventor, is a very important step in that. So, The first step is that AnyCAD file. And it will be for the, essentially for the architect. The first step will be for the architect or Revit user to generate a view within Revit that contains the area required for the equipment to be designed in. So, and as an example here, if you're designing a lift, then the view that is created in Revit would need to contain the relevant lift shaft and the required surroundings. So maybe the door openings at each floor level so that the lift doors can be placed in, wherever the winch house is going to be placed, all of the surrounding structure for the winch house. In another example, if you're designing a facade or a balcony, the Revit view that is created would need to include the required floors and walls that the balcony would be connected to. For our example today, as I mentioned, it would be equipment. In this case, it's a machine shop that is being placed within a new factory. So we can see on the screen here, we actually have the Revit model sitting there inside of Inventor. That is the entire sort of factory. We're only going to bring in a subset of this factory for the machine shop placement. So that's what the architect would have to prepare from their side as far as the Revit view goes. Once that model's ready, the Inventor user can then import that Revit model into the design as a referenced file. So using that AnyCAD import feature, they can reference the file in. This means there's a live link between the Inventor assembly that is created and the Revit file. The changes in the Revit file are picked up and updated inside of Inventor without needing to re-import that Revit file. This affords the designer the opportunity to design and place their machinery around the existing Revit geometry and avoid potential clashes within the design. The Inventor geometry can also be linked to that Revit geometry. What this means is that there is less rework for the Inventor user if the model is updated. So in that balcony example, if the size of the balcony or the opening where the balcony is attached to changes, your design of the balcony can adjust around that change in the Revit model. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Aldred. He's going to be doing our demos for us, and he's going to demonstrate what I have just explained. Thank you, Aldred.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Okay, so what we're taking a look at over here is just our Revit model. So I just want to go show you what the architects are looking at. So they'll have the full-on Revit model over here. And what they'll do to prepare the model for yourself in Inventor, they need to go and create a couple of views inside here. So if I look at my 3D views over here, I've got a 3D view, which is the entire view of the Revit model. And then I've got just two views over here. So I've got a production B and then a production B coordination. So you can see that we've actually cropped out exactly what I need over here. So it's not the full production B over here. So, you know, whenever you're working in between two different software packages, it's always a good idea to, you know, to just have the relevant information that you need. Too much information and you start slowing down the whole process, you know, the processing speed of your computer, and it can get a bit uncomfortable. You can still work, but, you know, rather try and get the correct information or the right information so that you can work as quickly as possible. Okay, so from this over here, we're going to go into Inventor, and we're going to go and AnyCAD this file in. So if I've opened up this assembly over here, and what I can do is, you know, place imported CAD files. So by placing the imported CAD files, I'm going to go look for that Revit file. Okay, so there we go. And you can see a preview of the view that I'm going to bring in. And I'm going to click on Open. So now this starts the import process. And if you've ever, you know, brought in maybe step files or anything like that, you'll notice that this does come up. You've got a reference model and you've got a convert model. So the reference model, if you've ever worked in AutoCAD, is very much an XREF procedure. So I'm XREFing these components in so that I can use the geometry that is over there. If I convert the model, then what happens is it's going to convert all the models into Inventor files and then break the link. And, you know, there's nothing I can do with it. I can't go and update my Revit model and you know, sort of and link it to my Inventor, and then work from there. Now, you'll notice over here, I've got my views, and these are the same views that I created in Revit over here. So if I go to production B, you'll notice there preview 1,427 elements. And that's the picture that I saw when I was in Revit. And then as well as my production B coordination, you'll see there that it's actually taken it down to 683 elements. So, you're again just reiterating the fact that, you need to just bring in what you need. Try not to bring the whole model in, because you don't need all that information. And once again, to slow your, your production down. What you can also do is you've got certain categories that come from Revit. And if you don't need all of these categories, you can start switching these off as well, which will in turn also bring those elements down. Okay, so once I've done that, I can click on OK. It just gives me a little warning that says, look, the optimum is 250 elements or less, but you can still go ahead with this. So if you don't want to see this message again, just go and just say, do not show this message again ever, and OK, and it starts the import process. Okay, so let's just wait a bit for that. Okay. So, just while this is importing, just what you do want to do is, have a chat with the architects before and plan everything. Sort of plan, what you need to see, so that, this import process is the quickest that you can possibly get when bringing it in. This process is also much quicker than actually importing it. So the AnyCAD, between AnyCAD and importing. So, if I had to import this, it would take much longer than what I'm seeing over there. Okay, we're getting some flashes.
I think just a note to make from my side, when chatting to the architect about what information you want to bring in, think about services for the machines as well. Any airlines that need to run to the machine, any water, things like that the architect may have in their model as well.
Okay, so it's asking me to place the component. Okay. There's a Friday afternoon, just struggling a bit here. Okay, there we go. So there it gives my preview of my components over here. Okay. So what I've done is, as well, when I've decided I'm going to place it grounded at the origin. It brings my first copy in. Ask me to put another copy. I don't need this. Just right click and OK. Okay, so now we've got our view over here. So you can see there's the cropped view over there. I can zoom in and see all my different components that have been created in Revit. Now, with this AnyCAD technology, it allows me to go and actually start creating components within within here, using the geometry that's there already. So if I go and create a new component, okay, I can actually go and select this. You can see I can actually select flat faces to start my sort of my part. And I'm going to say, right, let's start a new sketch, and let's go and see if I can start a sketch on that face over there. Okay, and you'll see here that I can actually project geometry. So I can project the geometry of that and start sketching. So maybe we want to make a cover for this. Maybe the cover wasn't there already. You can see that I can dimension between the two. Okay, so I'm using this model geometry as a reference. So, and if I do go back into Revit and I change the geometry of that, it's going to change inside Inventor as well. So that 50, it will always be 50, sort of bigger than the pipe that I'm seeing over there, the HVAC system that I'm seeing over there. Okay, so I'm just going to end it off for there, so you can see that I've created the. Oh, did I not extrude it? Okay. Okay, so I've just created my first component there of existing geometry that's come in from Revit. Okay. So I've just created some, sort of some components previously as well. And I'm just going to go to my representation over here. Okay, you can see that's the geometry. Ooh, I've force you into the wrong place.
I think you may have rotated the Revit file before placing it grounded origin.
Did I? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Let me just take this off and just fix it. You want to? So that's basically just bringing it in, bringing it into Inventor over here. I'm just going to go fix this quickly, and then you want to just carry on with the presentation.
Yeah, no problems. We can do that. So that is the process of bringing in the Revit file and then starting on the Inventor design. Now, once the design is completed, so we skip ahead to where our Inventor design is completed and we have all of our machinery in place. We have something very important that we have to consider at this point, and that is the complexity of the final design in Inventor. If you're an Inventor user, you know that inside Inventor, you would typically design to include all the manufacturing information. So you have all the little details so that you can manufacture the component. And therefore, your components are more complex than what is required in Revit. Revit makes use of basic geometry to allow for large-scale projects to run smoother. So if I have to use an example in Revit, you would have a simple reference of a window. But if you did a cross-section, you may not see the actual cross-section of the aluminium extrusions that are used to make the window. That window would just be referenced by, let's say, a part number that you're going to order from the manufacturer. Where if in Inventor, you're the manufacturer, that window, that very same window, would have that exact cross-section that is used. It would have the rubber seal. You would have all that information built into it. So what we need to do is because of this difference, we need to take our complex Inventor assemblies and we need to simplify them down before we can export them to Revit. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a very heavy design in Revit that's going to use a lot of resources. So this brings us around to the simplification tool and how it's been modified in Inventor 22. So the first major difference here over the previous versions is the ability to use model states within the simplification command. And model states, I'll discuss this in the next slide, but just keep this in mind that for the input options here, we're able to choose a model state. We also see options here to replace with envelopes, and this will allow you to essentially place envelopes with regards to certain geometry. So one of them there is that you can replace the entire Inventor assembly with just one single envelope, and that would give you basically one big bounding box that gives you the volume required for your assembly to fit into the Revit model. The other options here is to also replace each top level assembly or part with its own envelope. So if you have 10 machines or 10 sub-assemblies in your Inventor, you would end up with 10 bounding boxes representing the positions of those items. So essentially, like I said, you're creating these bounding boxes to represent the space requirements and reducing the amount of intellectual property as well that you might be sharing. You may not want to share a detailed version of your design. So you just give a bounding box and say, okay, that's where my machine needs to fit. If more detail is needed than just a simple bounding box, then you can use the exclude components and remove features options. This allows you to exclude parts by size. So you can set a maximum diagonal size and anything smaller than that gets removed. You can also manually pick components to remove as well. So you can click and say, well, I don't need this, that, and the other, and they're removed from it as well. And then lastly, the remove features allows you to remove features. We've got a list there in the screenshot on the right-hand side. You can remove holes with a maximum diameter, fillets. You can set fillets to be removed, chamfers, and so on. And so you can essentially de-feature your model and get just the basic kind of blocky look that is required inside of Revit. So going to the next slide, I mentioned that we would talk about model state. And for those of you that haven't seen sort of the Inventor What's New webinar that we did, we covered this in more detail in that webinar, but as a quick update here, essentially what model states does is it allows you to change between different representations of your either part or assembly. And so model states here is being used to simplify the assembly for export to Revit. In our instance, most of the components in our design were built from the ground up using model states to have different states to simplify the geometry. So a quick example would be like one of the motors at the top, one of those blue motors at the top of the design. That could be simplified down where all the cooling fins are removed from it. So it's just a cylinder. You've got less information with regards to that. So changing the state or the part or of assembly then changes the fidelity or the complexity of those parts and assemblies. So we can use these model states to also suppress small parts within the assembly. We even change the assembly configuration completely. So in the images here on the right-hand side, if we have a look at that image that's there, there's a lot of components within that piece of equipment. And if Aldred just skips one step forward for us, we'll see that image changes to a different state where a lot of the smaller components that are not going to affect the layout as a whole have been removed. So you can still see that that is, you know, a specific piece of equipment. There's enough detail there for us to know what it is, but there's not too much detail there that's going to kill Revit once you start putting it back into Revit. So this model state could be selected at the beginning of the export process or that simplification process to then reduce down the number of elements that are going to be exported to Revit. Okay, then that is the model state. So what we'll go on to from there is the very last section of the simplification command that we have now in Inventor, and that is the output. Basically using that simplified panel to output the Revit file. So how do we export the file? Like I said, part of the improved simplification command now allows you to choose the output type as a Revit model or a .rvt file. And it makes sense to build this option in here as we just discussed the need to simplify Inventor models down for consumption in Revit. So after selecting the output as the Revit model, the user would then specify the file name and location to save it. You would also specify all your simplification options. And then lastly, the user is able to select how they wish the file to be structured for scheduling and tagging in Revit. So you'll see there's a structure option in the image on the right. And this can be set to one of two options. The first option is one element, where your entire assembly that you've created, whether it be a complete assembly line, or in our case, a small machine shop, that would be treated as a single item. So if you did a schedule in Revit or tagged it in Revit, you would get a single item number for that. Our second option, which is the one shown there, is each top level component. And what this means is each top level component, whether it's a part or an assembly, in your Inventor general assembly will be shown on the schedule and will be able to be tagged individually. So our machine shop here has a CNC center, it has a jib crane, there are some bins for storage. Each of those would be able to be tagged individually inside of Revit using Revit's functionality. So Aldred will now take us through a demo showing the simplification and export in practice with Inventor.
Okay. Let's just okay. So just this is what the model would have looked like if I, bringing it in over here. And what we can do is we can go off and it's going to go to my Revit export view over here. So this is kind of what I want to export. So you can see all my components sitting inside the Revit model over here. And before I do the exports, I just want to take the visibility of the Revit model that I linked in, because I don't want to take that back to into Revit over there. Just take the visibility off. Now, with this over here, we spoke about model states. So if I take a look at these components, you can see that there's quite a bit of detail in here. And what I can do is if I open up one of these files, and I just go take a look at the model states components. Okay, so over here at the top, we've got the new model states that you have in Inventor 2022. And there you can see I've got master and I've got medium. If I double click on medium over here, you'll see that it defaces some of these, some of the features over here, just simplifying it even more. Now, in each of those different parts in this assembly over here, you actually do have medium model states each one. And what I can do is I can pull that into my sort of assembly over here. So if I select master over here, you'll see there's a lot more detail coming through. And then what I do over here is just before I do the export to Revit, I can just double click on the medium and it will then go and activate all the different medium model states inside my model over here. So once this is done, to export this out to Revit, I can go to the simplify model over here. Okay. And it brings up my simplification tool. And in 2021, there was a different option up over there for the simplify, which allowed us to do exactly what you're doing over here, but in kind of more steps. So they've kind of compressed all the different commands of simplify into this process over here. Okay, so just waiting for that.
While we wait for that, just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to post it up in the chat and we can then respond to those questions as well.
Okay, with whenever doing live demos, things do work in real time. So we're just having a little bit of see what's going on here. Carl, do you reckon it's because I've already got a simplification? I've already simplified this.
It could be loading up that simplified option there. Now, what Aldrid's actually just alluded to here is you'll see in the in the model browser on the left-hand side, there is actually a Revit exports folder, and part of that simplification process, there is a checkbox that allows you to create a link. I think it's, if I remember correctly, the checkbox says allow updates. Basically, what that means is it creates this Revit exports folder where you are able to right-click on that Revit file that's shown there. So the process of exporting has already been done on this design. So that folder now exists with a linked Revit model. And so if any changes are made to your design, let's say we had to move the jib crane or we had to move some of the storage boxes, we would not want to have to go through the simplification process again and reselect all of the settings that we had done previously. So the option there to be able to allow to update the Revit model links to that Revit model and then allows or creates that link to the Revit model, which allows you to essentially right-click on that file and choose to re-export it. And it essentially re-exports it with all the previous settings that were already applied. So you don't have to go through that simplification process again and change settings. And so it's a nice quick way of being able to update that Revit model as needed.
Okay.
I'm seeing the simplify toolbar up there, Aldred.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. We've got the simplification on the left-hand side over here. And once again, this is quite a nice thing that Inventor's done, the Autodesk team has done, is that we've got this property palettes over here. And, you can just go and, jump between the two different ones over here. And everything is in one place, exactly like the tab that you've got at the top, all your commands on the top, and then all your property modification tools will be on the left-hand side over here. Now, what we've got over here is just the input. So the model state, we can actually choose which model state we want, and that's the medium model states over there. The view, Revit exports, and any positions that you've created as well. Now, when Carl spoke about the envelopes, we're able to then go and choose what envelopes you want. And you can see they're all in one envelope. And if I select that, it just does one big bounding box. So if that's all you really need to be able to place your components, then that's the one that you'd go for. Then each top level component, you can see that it'll wrap each of the individual other parts or assemblies in an envelope. And then you've just got each part, which looks the same because, it's the same kind of component structure that we're going to be getting over there. The next thing we can take a look at the excluding of components. You can exclude by size, okay? So you can just choose a size, or you can go measure a size as well. And then what it'll do, it'll tell you how many it will exclude out of the parts. Removing features. So, here you'll go to, would you like to remove holes? All. Would you like to remove this in a range of holes? Fillets, chamfers, pockets, embosses, tunnels, and also you've got your preserve features. So if you do need, a couple of fillets or anything like that, then you have got that preserve feature option as well. Then the new thing for the simplification is, as we said, the Revit, or Carl said, is the Revit model. So you could have done a new part or substitute this back into your assembly, or you can export as a Revit file at RVT. Then you'll specify the name, where you'd like to save it, and then there's that structure, all in one element, or each top-level component, where each top-level component would be, you'd be able to, tag each component in your Revit. Now, at the bottom of here, sorry, not that, at the bottom of here, enable updating. So you must enable that updating, because if because then you'll get that option over there where you got your Revit exports. Okay. So once you've saved that, then we can go back to our Revit model over here and then just import that. So under your Revit, we've got your insert, okay, and then you've got your link. So this link, you can link your Revit file in, okay, and it will then be that file over there. Okay, so I've just pre-saved it and then click on OK. So it brings that link in, okay, and it's going to go back to my model here. There we go. Okay, so there it links that back in over there. So there I've got my components over there, and you can see there's the, so before, if I hadn't flipped that model in Inventor, it actually did show that there was a clash over here. So what we could have done is we could have, to show that clash to the architect, you could have either sent him some pictures or maybe a 3D PDF, which you can do from Inventor, or take it out to your shared views and they could take a look at that. And then, you could have coordinated the model and seen exactly who is going to do what. So with this, you can see that, but, maybe you can decide, right, send it to the architect. They can actually see exactly, how it's going to clash over there, and then they can move their object. So if I go in over here, this is the duct that needs to move. And over here, you can see you can go and change your models, change it to 3000. It shifts it to the right. If I go back to my view, you'll see there now that there is no clash happening over there. Okay, so I've shifted the entire component. So now what I could do is I could go and save this. And then it will then go and ask, it'll go send a message to Inventor, say, right, any CAD model that you've sort of included in your assembly has now updated. You go to there, updated, and then you'll see the update. So just going back to my Inventor over here, Okay. It would have, at the top of here, would have said, right, it needs to update. Click on the update tool, and then you'll see there that you don't have that clash over there. So I'm just having to click on OK on my simplification. I'm still in that command. And then you would have seen that it's not clashing when you take a look at this crane over here. Okay, you can just see that it's exporting the new Revit model. So that's basically the process that you've got in it. You bring it from Revit into Inventor, exporting out your Inventor model to Revit, bringing that back into Revit, making the adjustments, and then pushing your adjustments back into Inventor over there.
Okay, thank you, Eldred. So, as Eldred showed there, the process, as we saw there towards the end of the demo, that change is inevitable. It's something that's going to happen. Components are clashing. In this case, the jib crane was clashing with some of the HVAC. So, the change there needs to be made. Now, in our instance here, you could have thought, well, why didn't we move the jib crane in Inventor? Because in Inventor, we would have seen that clash up front. And it may be a design requirement for the machine shop to have the jib crane in that position because of its reach and its range. So moving it may not be an option. So at that point, there's that discussion with the architect, sending a file to the architect saying, hey, look, we've got this clash. Unfortunately, the equipment can't move. Can you move the HVAC? And, like Eldred said, you send that building model or you send that file through to the architect. So because there's this back and forth, the potential for this back and forth with changes, Autodesk have made the process of managing these changes a lot more simple through these links between Inventor and Revit. So let's take a step back and just have a quick refresh on what we've seen. So we had the first, excuse me, we had the first step where a model was supplied by the architect, and that was imported using AnyCAD into Revit. So there we have the building model to the left of our link there. That model is prepped by the architect and brought into Inventor. The assembly was designed in Inventor around this Revit model. So that's that coordinated design that I mentioned earlier, and potentially using the Revit model as reference to guide and move the Inventor designs as well. Then the final, or the second last step there, is then that Inventor assembly being simplified and exported as a native Revit file. So we've got there at the bottom, the Revit, what I would call the equipment model. So that's got your design from Inventor inside of that. Then the last step is basically round tripping that equipment model, linking it back into the building model. So you can see there's this circular reference happening as everything is basically being updated in that loop. And so both Inventor, through the use of the reference in AnyCAD, and Revit with that link to our equipment model reference file, keeps those live links to their respective files. Inventor will prompt you for an update when the Revit file is updated, and vice versa. When the Revit file is updated, Revit will prompt you for that change. And so this creates a smooth change when files are updated, ensuring that all parties are always on the same page in that coordinated model. And that change process becomes a lot easier with that update. There's no re-importing of native files, no back and forth of, okay, what file type can you import? What file type can I export to help you import? It's just a much smoother process. And that will bring us basically to our summary. So if we go ahead to the next slide there. In summary, basically the improved interoperability between Inventor and Revit allows for the smoother flow of information, as I said. And that information is obviously between the building designers or architects and the engineers designing the equipment for that building. This improvement makes it easier for the designers to cooperate in a coordinated environment. That coordinated environment then obviously is allowing for prevention of those clashes, and it allows you to work with increasingly more complex designs as well. Those coordinated models of this nature result in less rework being required on site, as your models line up and match from the start of the design process. And then the last note I'd like to make here is that to take a step further is that let's say the building model could even be updated as the build state of the project is actually going on. So you can update that Revit model to an as-built state, and then adjust the Inventor design accordingly. And once again, just leading to less rework, reduced rework on site once the products actually get onto site. So that's my closing statements there, and we'll open up for any questions. I haven't seen any questions come through on the chat. Aldred, I don't know if you want to, if the participants have microphones, you can unmute to take questions verbally as well. Just give a few minutes for any questions to come through. If you don't have any questions, then thank you for joining us for the presentation. Micrographics has four offices countrywide. We have Johannesburg, Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, and Durban. Myself, I'm based in Port Elizabeth. Aldred is based in Cape Town. And if any questions come to you afterwards, or you rewatch this webinar on YouTube, our contact information is here. You can contact your nearest office, and we would be able to answer those questions as needed.
Great, thank you very much, Colin.
Pleasure. I haven't seen any questions come through on the chat.
Okay, well, let's sign up.
Right. Once again, thank you for attending, and we'll see you at the next webinar.